Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Ahead of the Curve. Today, I've got my guest, Nick Fletcher, on with me. Nick, hey, welcome.
Nice to be here, Geoffrey with a G.
Nice to have you, Nick with an N. So, as you know, I've mentioned this to Nick in the past. Right now, I'm under a different kind of circumstance, as some of you guys might already see. I've got a different background happening here. So I'm actually up in a little town called Richmond, Quebec, Canada, where we got 4 inches of fresh snow. And it's still snowing, and it's the end of April. Like madness.
And I'm about to fly home to New Hampshire and see the same. So good decisions all around, I guess.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I don't think 2020 ever really went away. We're just kind of extending it straight through to 2021.
No, we paused a year ago, and we've all been living in an alternate, strange world.
Alternate, yeah. I like that. I like that theory a lot more. I like the idea that we've just basically pushed the pause button and we're living in a complete alternate reality.
It's comforting.
And we're hoping to God that at some point somebody will push play again.
Yeah.
And bring us back to where we paused.
Yeah.
So Nick, give us a little bit of a history about yourself and kind of where you started and how you got into this madness we currently live in. This crazy industry.
Yeah. So this was, ironically for me, this was kind of always the plan. I interned at a brand new public access TV station when I was in high school. And I met my first mentor, who told me the wonders of corporate production in America, and wound tales of pirates sailing the seas of video production in the wild. And I signed right up for the circus and all it brings with it.
You were a madman.
Yeah, from the beginning. I get that from my mom.
Had I actually truly known what this industry was going to withhold, like what it was going to hold in the path of the future, I don't know if it would have made the same decision.
Yeah, well, to be fair, he spun a pretty good commercial. Left some pretty key information out.
As I think almost every mentor and everybody in this industry did.
Yeah. It's their job.
Yeah, awesome. Come in. You're going to love it. It's great.
Yeah. It's the ongoing myth, right? We have to perpetrate. So yeah, that happened. I went off to Full Sail University for live production and touring, and then a cruise ship for a year. And then I started to get serious about my career. And moved to the Bay Area and just started working regionally. I worked for Delicate Productions as the only one of 2 video guys in an audio company, and then got the opportunity to learn Pandora's Box, and that was the beginning of the end. And ever since then, I've been trying to make computers do things that they weren't intended to do. So yeah, I went on tour for 5 years. My first tour was Lil Wayne, and that's a great story in and of itself. My first day flying in to replace someone at Jones Beach, New York, and having that person not be aware that I was arriving to replace them.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Yeah. So that was my first day in the prime time. But we ended up.
And that wasn't a sign right from the get-go?
I was unperturbed. I was not going to be held back by that. But yeah, and then so I toured for a few years while also kind of keeping the local fires alive and starting what is now Lucid, and ended my touring career with Beyonce in 2016, and then have been working full time as the director and CEO of Lucid since then. Done a lot of big shows, done a lot of kind of have been enthralled with the community of screens, and I think we've all collectively broken a lot of barriers, and I'm really proud of being part of that. So now I mostly screens produce and occasionally program, and am now the CEO of Just Networking, which was our...
No, not one company, but let's go for two.
Why not, right?
Why not?
If I haven't established that I'm glutton for punishment yet,
yeah,
that's true. This was our COVID pivot, and turned into a really fast-moving, needed tool for the industry. So the short blurb on that is that we're making the internet not scary for production, essentially, and extremely robust, and providing a tool set that allows you to bridge local networks between two cities anywhere in the world, or the same city if you'd like, but two sites anywhere, and
remote sites anywhere that has a reliable internet connection.
Exactly. Yeah, and we're so basically bringing the benefits of VPN technology to integrated systems. So either entire racks that are already coordinated as a LAN, they just need to be connected to another one transparently. So I'm sure we'll get into that some more, but that's my very brief history. I can dive into any more of it if we'd like, but that's the Cliff Notes.
Well, I think the thing that's actually interesting right off the bat is that you had a passion and a drive for video right off the bat.
Yeah.
And you started working professionally inside of basically a video world, even though you were working for an audio-based company.
Yeah.
But specializing in video right from the very start, which...
Definitely, yeah, and Full
I know
Sail was
from
very...
the history of a lot of the people that I've, guests, of course, that we've had on and friends, that's not been the case in general. A lot of us have come from different disciplines or have started in different areas thinking that we might be stuck in that discipline for, a prolonged period of time, like myself in lighting for a very, very long time before transitioning into video. So it's interesting that you already had a pretty good grasp on exactly what you wanted to do and what you wanted to focus on.
Yeah, it was kind of a pretty linear evolution. I definitely learned a lot of audio along the way, and was a monitor engineer for several shows, and learned how to program an MA for sure. But I was always squarely in the video camp, while kind of making it my business to know how the other departments worked, and that's kind of informed a lot of the futurism thought work, is bridging the gaps between the disciplines, because we're all trying to do the same thing at the end of the day, just skinning the cat in a very different way. So that kind of informs the future development of the work we do at Lucid, as we endeavor into virtual environments, and have been for a few years now, starting with Notch, but and being very frustrated very quickly with the abilities of the workflow, not so much the rendering technologies, but the control and the human interaction with virtual worlds is, even to this day, very limited, and
it's limited and somewhat cumbersome as well, depending on what the ultimate objective is, I think, at the end of the day. And that's something that's very interesting to touch upon, just from from a development perspective, is it's easy to kind of get wrapped up in the feature sets and on the functionality of a product. it's really hard to get the workflows. It's really hard to get those workflows right, you know, and to make them cohesive, and also to have the power, because I find again that you need, it's kind of a slipping scale, or a slippery slope, as they say, on the balance between features and the power that you might want an end user to have, you know, and it's very hard to be able to find that balance between the two.
Yeah, and balance. I mean,
balance
between...
you're probably recognizing that a little bit more now as you've dove into product development.
For sure, yeah, and a lot of people don't know this, but we've been making software at Lucid for about 3 years now, mostly for custom projects, not really releasing anything into the wild, but we've had a development team in-house for a few years now, so we've always kind of been thinking that way. As we laid down our swords, you know, complaining about other people's products, and started to take on the responsibility.
So you put your money where your mouth is.
Hell yeah. You know, it was a big turning point for us, honestly, is that we kind of, we'd reached the limits of what was possible with other people's, and they weren't moving fast enough for us in terms of like future development. So we decided to start patching things together ourselves, and that kind of became a few building blocks of useful things, and so on and so forth. Now it's kind of matured into a beast of you know, tool sets that can be used in real projects, but we still just use them internally because, you know, releasing the concept of releasing a product into the wild is an entirely different endeavor than having something that you can use and adds value to your workflow. So that's kind of where we're at. But yeah, putting our money where our mouth is, and I encourage everyone else to do the same. You know, every time I get to talk about it, I'm like, put yourself on the other side of the coin, because there are a lot of users that are very loud and vocal about the shortcomings of products in the marketplace. I'm like, yeah, but like, that's their story. You know, those were the best decisions that they could have made for them at that time. And yeah, what you're saying is correct. And what are you going to do about it?
Every story needs to have a starting point, right? You need to start that book somewhere, and it might not be the most polished novel when you write the first. It's basically like writing the first draft. You've got your first draft written, and you want to put it out there so that you can get some feedback.
Yeah,
and then you get that feedback about, you know, different little plot holes and problems in the story, and you write it and you rewrite it and you fix it and you mold it into something different as you go along.
Yeah, and you know, our mentality from the beginning has always been open and honest about business practices as well as technology. So that's the only frustration I have is not coming at it honestly and saying, yep, these are all the things we're bad at. Anybody got any ideas?
Maybe that's where we've got to start, right? Maybe that's where everybody's going to start, is like, this is what I really truly suck at.
Yeah.
Help me make it not suck anymore.
Yeah. It's you know, I don't know, it's cathartic to be extremely honest about what sucks, because then no one has anything to say. They're like, oh, you've thought about the things that suck way more than I have. You're 10 moves down the game from where I'm thinking about.
You guys are way ahead of me on the suck scale right now.
Exactly.
I don't know if I'm ever going to be able to catch up. Yeah, Christy was saying change is permanent. Transition is tough.
That's right.
Without a doubt, is it ever?
Without a doubt. Yeah, and you know, our community, the community watching this, and the broader kind of what we call the screens community, what I call the, you know, the brave voyagers into the unknown. around more than screens, especially now it's converted into entire virtual environments and kind of the future of our craft, of stagecraft in general. And we are so tightly competitive and comparing ourselves internally, I think sometimes that, most people interacting with these mediums aren't even thinking about half the things that we're thinking of. So give yourself a break, everyone. We'll get there.
It's so true. I mean, it's even the way that we perceive ourselves in a lot of ways when we go out there. I mean, we're so critical, and us as a community, I find like we're extremely critical in the ways that we work and the ways that we do things, because we want to produce and provide really high quality content, and assets and product back to our own community and to the customers that everyone serves, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes we get a little bit too wrapped up into that ideology, and we forget that, like how many people are really paying attention, or even for that matter, how many people really care?
And I think what lives in that, like that's a common statement, right? How many people really care? And I think what
I like
really
common statements.
Yeah. But I would rephrase it just a little bit to say, like, are we paying attention to the first principles of what we're actually trying to do here, right? What is like the fundamental human thing that we're trying to do here? And if we go back to those things, the answer becomes very clear very quickly, rather than bickering about, protocol X versus protocol Y or whatever.
The pros and cons. Which one is better than the other?
Yeah.
When it's not really a question about which one is better, but which one serves the best purpose and which one is the most functional and which one is going to work the best. Yeah.
And what do you want to do? What is it that you actually want to do? And that's why we're, proud of, a lot of the project-based work we've done at Lucid is transient and doesn't have a very long life, because, and this goes across the board for many endeavors in the arts, is that they get thrown away, right? And that can be really frustrating, but also it just has to be accepted, I think. But it's what makes me excited about Just Networking, because it's a very fundamental utility level tool that can be used in a lot of different ways, and just kind of makes things faster and easier across the board.
And that's really the in a lot of ways that is the goal, right?
Right.
Is to take complex, difficult things and make them life-changing in a lot of ways. I think we're all ultimately like kind of going off the handle a little bit, and getting a little more abstract. Then again, I think on this show I get abstract a lot. We're all really trying to get to a point where we can save time.
Yes.
And it's just so unbelievably precious that we forget how precious it is, and how much that goal really affects what we ultimately end up delivering in the end, because it all becomes time-based, especially in the live events industry, where you're up against time basically from the time that you start a project to the time it concludes. And as you say, it comes and goes. You start that project, and then the project comes to an end, and then it's a point in history. It's a point in time.
That's right. Yeah. So
next one.
So we both simultaneously iterate many more times than other industries, and yet spend drastically less time developing based on the results of those iterations, right? We just go into the next cycle, just constantly in the next cycle instead of adding to the knowledge base in a way, like effectively. But yeah, it's taking that big step back to what actually provides like fundamental broad-based value to a lot of situations was what led us to the approach at Just Networking, which is to not solve the problem that we have today, but fix the ecosystem of how do we in the events and supporting companies and industries of the events industry and more and beyond, media production in general, how do we interact with each other, and therefore how do we at Just Networking build a system that allows us to interact in that way, in that very modular, flexible way, because shows get put together in any myriad different the variety is as wide as the universe. So
pretty much
we spent a lot of time designing the what ifs, the kind of the fundamental roles in that equation, and making sure that you could put the puzzle together in any way you wanted, not so much on a technical level but on a human level. And so on our platform, you can, anyone can pay for the network and anyone can manage the network, and anyone can own the hardware. And those three groups can come together in any order or configuration that you'd like and do
any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, exactly. And we're talking about something pretty. Yes, that one, the last one. Perfect. Yeah, and we're talking about something pretty simple when we talk about networking, really. Right? We're just talking about making a connection between two or more places, and allowing network traffic to flow. But the power we hope that this has long term is to really democratize skilled labor across the globe. So that people in Australia can do shows with people in LA, can do shows with people in Berlin, can do shows with people in Tokyo, and nobody's the wiser, really. So
that's a great thing.
We hope. The end of that sentence is always "we hope," right? I'm looking forward to the first units start shipping in early May, and we'll get our first beta test shows have already happened, and all the tests are very successful. But spurring that community to really embrace remoteness and take it and run with it is my job. So.
Well, I bid you nothing but the best, and I think it's going to be super, super successful just from taking a preview and taking a look at it. So those of you watching, if you guys want to check it out, go to just-networking.com. I'm going to bring up that link again here. So yep, just-networking.com, and you guys can check it out there. So Nick, I wanted to talk to you a little bit as well about your career as a whole, and
Sure.
Kind of molding into screen producing. And I think it would be actually interesting for the viewers that are watching to get a little bit of an insight of exactly what that entails, because it's kind of I wouldn't say it's a new role, but it's a pretty specialized role, and it's something that we haven't really spoken about a lot on the show in the past. Of course, we've kept a lot of focus on things that are trending right now, but we actually really haven't spoken about, like the careers and the paths and things like that. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your role and career path as a screen producer. And if you wouldn't mind kind of giving the viewers a little insight as to what that exactly entails.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it's a good question. I don't think we've.
You're welcome.
I think, yeah, I think many people have endeavored to answer it, and we haven't actually come to an agreement collectively about what that title means. That being said, we've gotten closer, I think, and I can give you my personal, the way that I embody that role.
Well, that's why you're here. So, like,
sure.
The stage is yours, my friend.
Yeah, so I became a screens producer out of necessity from being a very frustrated programmer, which is pretty common, I think. I've been a timeline programmer since the beginning. I've done hybrid models with consoles and timeline, and taken advantage of both, but I tend to go back to timeline, especially with some of the newer tools. So that grew into, us early, especially early programmers dealing with Notch in real time were really in the thick of it, right? We were literally the content team and the execution team and the engineers and the political figures dealing with the client all at the same time. So that's both incredibly trauma inducing and the best boot camp for eventually just being that political figure. So that was kind of my evolution, was from programmer being asked to do it all to person ahead of time making the right decisions to put the right pieces in the right place so that the on-site situation is calm and predictable and understood by all parties, instead of everybody showing up at rehearsals with a slightly different expectation of what a video / screens / projection
should look like, and
or even what it can do, right?
What it can do,
what can be done in general, and what ours today can do, which are all a bunch of variables that can be put together in a bunch of different ways. And so that's what I do primarily now, is consult with clients who want to get a specific effect and tell them which pieces they should put together in order to get that effect, and for a specific budget, right? So that kind of encapsulates my role as a screens producer, is that I am the Lorax. I speak for the screens, right? Long before, hopefully in the best scenario, I'm involved with the client and the project at a stage where those decisions can still be affected. And that's the fundamental difference, I think, between a screens producer and a programmer or a content manager or anything else, is that we're involved much earlier, and kind of.
Yeah, you're basically working as a producer in a lot of ways.
Exactly. Yeah.
But exactly as the title states, you're a screen producer.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. It really is,
it's quite literal as to what it is.
The big dividing, the two buckets, I think, that screens producers fall into are content screens producers and technical screens producers. And I've always been, and it varies project to project, often I am involved before the content team and managing the content team. And that's, in my opinion, the best scenario, where I'm not the creative director for the content team, but I am managing their process and ensuring that everything, conforms with the right way of doing things for our given situation.
Yeah, and what your client also is asking for or expecting.
Exactly, and their interests.
When they jump up into rehearsals, or they. to see it for the first time.
And keeping timelines in check and making sure that the content company doesn't get in hot water by overpromising something. Because while
that never happens.
No, never, right? And a myriad of issues that can come up. But my primary skill set now is reading the tea leaves of political situations and budgetary situations and making the judgment call on whether something is going to make it or not. Like, are we going to make it to orbit, or are we going to burn up 90% of the way there because we didn't bring enough fuel? So that's kind of what it's matured into. This is a long and hard fought road to to what I do now.
I want to ask just a fun play off of this is, what is one of your fondest memories, or even short stories about your time as a producer? There's got to be a moment that kind of pops right into your head.
Oh, many.
Of course, one that you can speak about,
Of course, yeah. No NDA is being broken here. I think, I don't know. I think the day I became a producer was on Game of Thrones, the musical tour, when we had the incredible support of the most talented screens producers. I don't like absolute sentences, but some of the most talented producers in the industry, Drew Findlay and Dirk Sanders, running the screens team. But then the rest of the project had so many challenges that I had to step into a role of direct client negotiation, right? And so there was a specific conversation where we were everyone was either going to get fired, or we were going to redesign the show to move forward. And the tour was going to get canceled, or we were going to redesign some things. And
that's quite a predicament.
It was very intense, and there was a cohort, a team of people who trusted each other at an incredible level, and winked and nodded and threw hand signals across the room to orchestrate a situation that avoided disaster, right? And that being in that on that team of people who orchestrate that scenario was I never wanted to be on any other kind of team, I guess, and it was horrible, right? It was painful in the moment, but then afterward it was like we pulled it off. And that's, I think, the essence of what we do, right? We're all adrenaline junkies at the end of the day.
We really, truly are adrenaline junkies at the end of it. We thrive for these situations that put you into like imminent peril if you don't pull it off. And you dig really deep to your core, pull everything you've got out of you, including your soul, put it all on the table and be like, all right, we're going to make this happen. Like, no matter what, we're going to resolve this. That's the one thing that I've loved about our industry as a whole is the amount of talent that we have as a community in problem solving is unbelievable.
It truly is.
It really is remarkable to see the amount of talent that we've got on all different disciplines and be able to just pull these crazy last minute tricks out of their hats and be able to solve what you would think is inevitably unsolvable in a very short period of time. It's pretty freaking remarkable.
Yeah, and I've only grown more appreciative of that and grown in more awe of our community as I've kind of grown and expanded outside of our industry to interacting with the games industry or large scale VFX for film, and just these slower moving behemoths that don't do, anything in 24 hours. We might schedule a meeting and talk about it in 24 hours, but we're certainly not gonna.
Yeah, you're certainly not going to pull a full-fledged multi-million-dollar production out of a bunch of trucks and throw it all up and do a fully produced show in 24 hours.
Yeah, and it's both awe-inspiring and terrifying, so my directions have gone in both directions, right? To really appreciate the people that I work with, give them a break, and endeavor to protect them and avoid the really bad situations, and apply that ingenious energy towards further capability rather than fixing bad situations, is far too often the case.
Yeah. You mean we're not a whole bunch of nuts and bolts mechanics?
Yeah, gear that eats is basically what I've heard.
Sorry, what did you say? What was that, Nick?
I've heard that we're just gear that eats is pretty much.
I thought you said geeks.
Oh no,
with a capital G, but I would say that is true too.
That's also true. Yeah, that is true. Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to be doing what we do, then there is definitely that element of geekiness and nerdiness that has to be within you.
Absolutely.
Even on the creative side, you have to have it, because if you start getting into some of these different creative tools, they're not just made in a way that is fully intuitive for an artist. You have to have some engineering.
Not even close. Not even, they're not even intuitive for an operations person. Never mind an artistic person. But it really is a very large chasm to cross, and that user experience conversation of product design and perspective, two wildly different perspectives that you have to join together. But that's what we try to do every day.
It's so true. So I titled the chat today as Choreographing Creative Media and Engineering, and I think we've kind of covered and stayed on that pretty well, actually, surprisingly.
Yeah, I think that was a good title. We didn't really talk about that title beforehand, but you nailed it.
I figured it would be appropriate for what we were going to kind of cover, but I wasn't 100% sure. I'm never really 100% sure. I just kind of whip it up and I'm like, all right, I think we could kind of stick to this somehow, some way, and pull this conversation back to the title, maybe.
Yeah. Well, and I think that instinct, following that instinct, is more appropriate in more situations than people
tend to realize or trust.
Yeah, tend to realize and trust.
So I also wanted to see, I mean, we've spoken a little bit about just networking side and about the importance, especially of workflows, and kind of covered a lot of that side on the engineering. But also on the creative side with Lucid, of course, you guys do a lot of engineering-based stuff and design-based stuff, but you also do a lot of creative work as well, and do a lot of producing work. So I thought it would be interesting to also talk about, some of those creative processes and pulling those creative processes in, especially with work that's been done. I mean, you guys have done a lot of great work with other partners and collaborating with other creative firms, but you guys have also done a lot of great work on your own, and a lot of great work for several large artists and A-name artists. And I'd love to, just kind of touch upon some of the creative processes that you guys have had, inside of Lucid, and just kind of, I guess, tail end the conversation that we've been having a little bit around that, because there's just so much that's there, and
Sure.
it would be a shame to kind of walk away from this discussion without talking about that a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, it is a a deep and wide ocean of a subject. The role that we've certainly output creative product ourselves, but the role we keep getting pulled back into, especially on a much bigger projects, is really managing the process and managing expectations, and that's what I can speak to very handedly. So we've formed a very close relationship with Savages, Ted and Ted Palace and
we love our Ted Palace.
Yeah.
Ted is actually really, really, I love Ted because in so many different ways, because he's an amazing individual, for one. He's very talented, but he always pops up everywhere. Like, you just see Ted he just pops up. He's like, those games at the carnival where the heads pop up and you hit them with a hammer, and then they pop up somewhere else. Like,
you just can't get rid of them.
That's the way I think about Ted. He just kind of goes up and down and pops up like all kinds of different places.
Yeah, for sure. And that variety of experience is, I think, what formed a lot of our relationship, is drawing the connections between things rather than knowing that this is the right way to do it, right? And so big shout out there. A lot of our more recent projects have involved them, and that's all to pivot to say that we have started endeavoring towards a new way of putting the whole puzzle together, both on a technical level and on a political level. And I would argue that, especially in something as integrated as real-time /XR /virtual production /whatever you want to call it, I prefer none of those terms, for the record. I wish they would all go away because they oversimplify everything. As a producer, I wish we wouldn't call it one thing, because it's six things working together. But that's a side rant. What I'm doing now is putting teams together, and so it's interesting to talk about the creative processes and the business processes together for me, because they're so tightly wound, and the technical, they're so tightly integrated now that it's impossible to not. And the way that we represent that on projects is that I've started opening my budgets to everyone. I bring on partners to projects rather than subcontractors, right? Always. And we open the books and we say, look, this is how much things are going to cost, and you manage this piece, but we're all going to take a percentage of the final budget at the end of the day. And simply making that change has opened up the creative process to such an amazing, relaxed environment.
Well, yeah, I'm not going to say, I mean, it totally friggin' makes sense, because I've always been one for translucency. I want to know that the bus is going to run me over before the bus runs me over. I feel much more comfortable in a transparent environment where people are being honest with me, instead of being coy or not really having being very arbitrary, or just not having a sound answer.
Yeah.
And people are going to work better that way. People are going to feel better that way.
Phenomenally better. And it's my phrase is, you'll never know how good it feels to stop getting punched in the face. But like,
until somebody stops punching you in the face.
Yeah, that's how it felt the first time I ran a project with my open budget and my team, who never questioned whether I was my motivations were in the correct place when I told them a certain thing or whatever, right? And so that's how we're influenced. That's how the creative process has evolved for us, is to attack it from the business level, because good creativity can't happen without transparent business, I would argue.
I think that's a great approach, because even from an artistic side, you know, traditionally, in a lot of ways, creatives, very creative people that are very much focused on that side of their brain, they don't want to deal with that part of it. They get stressed out. They get, you know, they don't want to have to worry about the financial side or the business side or the political side. They just want to create. They just want to do what they're good at and not have to worry about it. And they get stressed out. I know this from, you know, firsthand knowledge, that you get stressed out about worrying about those things. And it's nice to be able to just come up front with a creative team and be like, here's where we stand. Here's the budget. Here's, you know, here's the brief. Here are our creative briefs. Let's hammer it out, you know, and everybody is at least that point. They know what they've got and they know where they need to go, and they're either going to take it or they're not. You know, you give them basically a very straight black and white choice. It's not super gray, and you're setting I guess the point is you're setting expectations right from the very start.
That's
where people just don't even have to worry otherwise about, you know, how things are gonna fall at the end of a project.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's the most key point, is that we have that conversation once right at the beginning, right? We treat a project like a startup company and say, you're the creative founder, you're the technical founder, I'm the executive founder. These are our roles, and we're gonna go kill it. But throughout the process, we don't need to have that conversation again. We don't need to be like, well, where are you at on hours? You know, where are you at on, like, we have that conversation constantly with the client, because we're like, well, does that request fit within the scope we agreed on, right? That's our control. But we as a team internally can just go fight the enemy, right? Instead of internally fighting and, you know, and breaking down when the firing starts.
It's so true and so important. You know, Tracy's saying she agrees on the transparency and clarity, and it's I can totally see how that takes the relief off of a creative team, and also helps those creative teams just be so much more relaxed and better at their jobs at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, and that's not to say that projects aren't challenging, right?
Of course not. No, they're all challenging. What?
We're just we just like we want to again put that effort and that talent towards that, like your brain cycles. How many brain cycles do you spend figuring out whether or not whether or not your relationship with Nick coincides with what you're doing today or the request that just got made or whatever. But just take all of that out of it, and we can collectively solve the problem. And so I would go so far as to say the only reason to hide your numbers is to screw someone over. And maybe take a look at yourself. If you're hiding information from your team, then that team's probably not put together
unless you're hiding information, because I think it's safe to say that you can hide information that is still protecting your team.
Of course.
There might be there's outside information, of course, or maybe even some inside information that you don't need to share everything.
No.
You just want to make sure that
that they have the information they need to really move forward confidently, rather than wandering in the dark. So.
Absolutely. I think that's a great note to actually tail this thing off. So, Nick, I just wanted to thank you so much. For those of you who have been watching, and want to reach out to Nick, as Nick has mentioned earlier on, he's not the CEO of one company, but two companies. One of them being a creative company called Lucid. So you could check out Lucid's work at lucid.rocks. And if you want to take a look at some of the hardware products and VPN-based products that Nick has been working on, check out just-networking.com. And then, Nick, I've also been throwing up your LinkedIn comment here, or LinkedIn link, not LinkedIn comment.
Yeah, that's the best way to find me personally. And I just wanted one more plug real quick to keep an eye out on the Outernet London project that I can't fully disclose, but they have a website and it's going to be awesome. So check out Outernet.
Yes, Tracy. Protection from internal politics is definitely a good thing, especially as we know from our own personal past experiences working together. So I also wanted to let the viewers know that we're going to be taking a little bit of a change in pace here with Ahead of the Curve. We've been doing this weekly now, as you loyal followers have been following for over a year. We've been doing this now on a weekly basis, and I'm going to take a little bit of a break. I've got some exciting news, though, that is going to come out in the weeks ahead. So stay on the lookout for that. But we are not going to be having a weekly episode next week, or for that matter, the week after. So we're probably going to look at more or less going to a monthly format, and I'll be giving you guys some more news on that as we move ahead. But Nick, I would like to thank you so much for kind of being the last guest of the weekly Ahead of the Curve episodes.
The latest night with Geoffrey with a G.
But it's been really cool.
I think you should change the format completely and go late night radio host.
Late night radio host, huh?
Yeah. Let's go like 2 a.m. and really get into some
you know what though? Stuff. The funny thing is we'd probably hit like even more viewers if I did that.
Absolutely.
And it would be a much different show.
Well, I look forward to whatever.
It would be a much different show with a much different format. Yes. Late night at 2 a.m. Yeah, I could just see what would come out of those episodes. Well, thank you so much, Nick. I really appreciate you. Shh. Really, maybe that's the name. That should be the name, is Shh. Just S with a bunch of trailing H's afterwards. But yeah, Nick, thank you so much. Thank you guys. Thanks to the loyal viewers that you got. I mean, you guys have been amazing. It's been wonderful being able to push this content and be able to, bring this back into the community for you. And it's just been an unbelievable journey for me, along, of course, with all the guests that I've been bringing on as well. So thank you guys so much for your support. It's been a wonderful experience all the way around. And I really do look forward to seeing a lot of you soon in person, but also once we kind of release the news of what is in store for the future of Ahead of the Curve. So thank you guys so much, and stay ahead of the curve, everyone. We'll talk to you all again very, very soon. Thanks, Nick.
Thanks for having me.